Greetings, book nerds! Welcome to the Book Nerds Corner. In this video, we are going to be exploring fairy tale romances with spice, which I'm super excited about. All three of the books I will be reading in this video have been gifted to me generously by authors, and I'm really excited to get to them. And I figured since I've been being gifted so many of them recently, I might as well put them in a video. So we're going to start off with Ella's Rise by Leslie Crown. This one is a Cinderella retelling, and it's the first in a series that currently has 4 books in it called the Fairy Tale Realms series. The first one is a Cinderella retelling, as I just said. The second one is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, which I also might eventually read in a video, so because I have that one coming in the mail for me. And the third book is a Puss in Boots retelling, and the fourth book is a Little Red Riding Hood retelling. So some of them are very classic. I mean, Cinderella, Beauty and the Beast, Little Red Riding Hood. But honestly, I haven't seen very many Puss in Boots romances, so that are like retellings. I mean, it is a romance too, but so that one has me really intrigued and had me definitely eyeing the series. Working with Leslie has been very great thus far, so I'm excited to finally read one of her books and see if I should keep working with her, you know, because if I don't end up loving it, I should just let someone else have the opportunity. But yeah, I am a huge fan of fairy tale retellings, and I'm interested to see if this one will bring something new to the Cinderella story, because I feel like a lot of people who rework Cinderella, they all kind of end up being really similar. I mean, there's been some like really unique ones. This one is a adult retelling with spice, so I'm very intrigued to check this one out. I will let you know what I think in just a little bit. Alrighty, it's a bit of a dreary morning here in Minnesota. It's like trying to rain while there's a bunch of snow on the ground, so I'm sure that will be a mess here in a little bit, but I'm just going to try to ignore that and get some good reading done. Anyway, I finished Ella's Rise yesterday afternoon, and I thought it was really fun. I'll tell you a little bit about it before I dive too deep into my review here. But Ella's Rise is a unique retelling of the Cinderella story, in which Ella is like a fallen princess from a kingdom that was cooed by the current regency. Like, the other main character's name is Thal. He's the prince that we're following, and his family cooed her family. And Ella is very set on getting revenge for her family and killing Thal's father, the current king of her kingdom, or their 2 joint kingdoms, because now he's the king of both kingdoms. Ella was taken from the castle during the coup and by this old woman who later grew ill and had to gift Ella to this family of blacksmiths, and they're less than nice. And this is where the kind of iconic Cinderella element comes in. Ella is forced to pretty much work as their maidservant and do everything that the family bids her to do. Or eventually Ella runs into the prince, and he's very intrigued by her. He buys her some free cloth, which eventually will become her dress that she wears to an event. But rather than a ball right away, it's actually a funeral in which Ella attends. But the ball scene does happen eventually, which is something I wasn't quite sure about, so I'm glad to hear that the ball scene indeed did occur. One of my favorite parts about this one was definitely how fierce and like stubborn of a character Ella is. She's willing to go all out for what she believes in, and she really doesn't want to back down from her quest for vengeance, which I think is really fun and desirable in a female main character. Thal, on the other hand, is very much a sweet boy. He's very confused why his father cooed Ella's family in the first place and has no desire to rule a kingdom. But unfortunately, his older brother just passed away in a terrible accident, so now he is the heir to the throne. Due to this, his mother and father are very insistent on him getting married as soon as possible and bearing an heir, so that's where the ball comes in. Thal's family throws a ball and invites all the eligible suitors, which is another very classic element of Cinderella, which I adored about this book. There's also some smaller elements scattered throughout, such as like, I liked the twist on how Crown did Ella's fairy godmother. Like, she's still like magic and stuff, but she's not like a typical fairy godmother, so I thought that was fun. She befriends some mice, not as important, but I thought was still a nice like shout out to the story. And she definitely has a rise from like being a poor person to a rich person, but she was originally a rich person who fell to poor and then rose back up to rich. So I thought there was just some really fun things that were very important to the Cinderella story that were definitely present within this one, that were done really well, but with a very fresh take. This one is spicy. It is a adult spicy retelling, but it wasn't as spicy as I thought it was going to be. There's only a couple scenes and they're both pretty mild. Everything is 100% consensual between Ella and Thal, and the moments are only made sweeter by Thal's 100% adoration of her, and he's very generous and chivalrous when it comes to Ella as a person. I honestly was surprised at how quickly this one wrapped up. As I was approaching the end, I was like, oh my goodness, there's not very many pages left. How's it all gonna end? I honestly would read an entire series set in this kingdom with these characters, but regardless, I'm super excited to read the next book in the series, Mirabelle's Beast, which I have also been generously gifted by Leslie Crown, so you will probably hear updates on it in the nearest future. I haven't picked it up from my parents' house yet because I have all my packages mailed there, for then I don't lose them to the strange void that is my apartment complex. But I definitely would recommend this one. I gave it a 4 out of 5, and I'm really excited to read the rest of the series and check out the next book because I love fairy tale retellings and Leslie Crown knows how to write a good one. Alright, so that's book 1 down, so now we'll move on to book 2. I will be reading Wrath of the Never Queen by Storm Lomax, which I only have in my Kindle, and for some reason the cover was not attached to the EPUB, so I'll just pop up a graphic here rather than show you a Kindle that you can't see anything on anyway. But yeah, this one is another adult spicy retelling. This one is inspired by Beauty and the Beast, which is one of my favorites, so I'm very excited about that one. I read one of Storm Lomax's short stories and adored it, so I'm really excited to check out one of her only full-length novel and see if it's something that I also love. I think it'll be really good because it has very similar vibes. It's definitely very fantastical, and it's filled with feminine rage, which I thought was really fun about her last story that I read, and it's a Beauty and the Beast inspired story, so what's not to love here? Anyway, I'll update you when I'm finished with this one, and I hope that your spring is a little less dreary than our Minnesota spring we got going on right now, because honestly, it was really peaceful to wake up to the rain this morning, but when I remembered that like we still have so much snow on the ground, I was like, man, that's just going to be a giant ice puddle in our parking lot, and I'm so not excited for it. But yeah, I hope it's a little nicer where you guys are, and I will inform you when I finish this one. Alrighty, I'm back to tell you guys about my thoughts on Wrath of the Never Queen by Storm Lomax. And honestly, I really took my time with this one because I was really enjoying it and I thought the story was really good. And then I hit like the 50% mark and I'm like, no, this book has to be finished. It's just too good. I was trying to like savor it, but I didn't quite do that. But yeah, this one is a really unique retelling of Beauty and the Beast, featuring a young witch by the name of Shivani, who lives in this cursed kingdom ruled by a vile king. This king sentenced his wife to death many years ago after she cursed their son with this curse, which turns them into a hideous beast at random intervals. He has decided that in order to break the curse, the prince needs to find his true love because, you know, that's often the case. And he's like, well, let's try this. So once a year, a young girl, you know, like 18 and older, you know, like anyone who's of age can be volunteered to the castle, and their family will be provided with like a bunch of money and like the promise that they'll never go hungry and all that stuff. So it's like a big honor, but it's like these girls are called the Never Queens, which is the title of the book, or, you know, part of the title of the book. And they are killed within 6 months if they do not break the curse and fall in love with the prince. So the stakes are very high in this one, and Shivani knows that the only hopes she has of surviving is to get out of there. Mossguard isn't a good place, and she is a witch who is very studious and loves to read and stuff, so she's like, hey, if I can get a scholarship slash internship at a big college, I can get out of here without having to fear for my life on a daily basis. That is until her father decides he has too much gambling debt and sells her to the king in order to clear his name. So Shivani finds herself locked in a castle with no allies and no one to help her but herself. She's very bitter. Her magic has been shut off somehow, and she doesn't know how she's going to get away. She pretty much just sits there and tries to brainstorm ways to escape, but she's locked up and there's guards everywhere and her hopes aren't very high. One day, a servant comes in and tells her that the king requests her presence, and she knows what that means. When a vile man requests the presence of a young girl, it's never a good thing, you know. So she decides to try to escape, and she crawls out the window, and she's on like the 3rd floor, and they're in a big castle, so she's really high up. And she's like, I'm gonna try to jump to this tree, and if it doesn't go well, that's better than the fate that the king would have for me. Luckily, the prince, who she is destined to, or she's been volunteered to help out, rescues her before she like falls to her untimely demise. And she learns that he's not as monstrous as she first thought he was. These two eventually team up and they try to like brainstorm how to save the servants of the castle as well as themselves from the vile king's wrath. That's pretty much the premise. The romance in this one is it's such a slow burn, but it's like such a satisfying slow burn because like you can tell that like he really likes her, but like Shivani doesn't want to like think that he could like her because she's just some girl that's been like forced upon him, and now they're like in this reluctant agreement to like where he's pretending to sleep with her for then the king doesn't like take her from them, and they're just kind of forced into each other's proximity, but like they eventually start their walls eventually start to break down. There's the iconic like scene where in the original story the beast gets attacked by the wolves and then like Belle takes care of him. In this book, the prince, when he turns into this beast, it's a very like excruciating experience for him. He comes back and he's covered with boils and blood marks, and it's not a great experience. So every time he transforms, Shivani is there to take care of him, and it's super sweet and wholesome. And there's only one steamy scene in this entire book, which I was actually kind of surprised about. I thought it was going to be a little spicier, but I was super satisfied with it. The yearning between these two and like their gradual falling for each other is like it's so rewarding from a romance reader standpoint, and I absolutely ate it up. There's quite a few other like shout outs to the Beauty and the Beast story, with obviously the prince turning to a beast at night, he being cursed, and Shivani is an avid reader, and she lives with her, or she doesn't live with her, she lives with her cruel father, but she apprentices under her eccentric aunt, who is very much like Belle's father in the original story. And I thought the vibes and Beauty and the Beast vibes are like very much there, but it didn't like take away from the experience for me. I thought the servants were all really fun side characters, and honestly, the prince is the sweetest sweet boy. Like, he's such a cinnamon roll of a character, and Shivani is such a kick butt female main character that like them meshing together is so sweet, because like she's so fierce and like fiery, and he's so sweet and wholesome, but like they both work together to take down this really dark entity, and it was just such a fun dynamic. I literally think I'm going to purchase this one the next time I make a Barnes & Noble order, because I absolutely love this book, and like I could literally already reread it again, so I'm very excited about it. But yeah, definitely 5 out of 5 stars. This is probably going to be my favorite book of the month, because it just was so good. It blew everything else out of the water, and I absolutely love it. And I've now read like Stormwell Max's debut, so I'm really excited to see what she does next because her story was so good, filled with feminine rage and forced proximity, and he falls first, cinnamon roll male main character, just all really great tropes, and I absolutely ate it up. For the final book in this video, I believe I'm going to read The Little White Cat and the Dog That Wasn't. This one is actually based off of an Irish fairy tale, and I'm not familiar with the original one, but that doesn't mean like the story isn't going to be as fun or filled with like fairy tale-esque vibes. I have heard of like a similar, like I've heard of books with the similar stories, so maybe they're also based off this fairy tale, but I'm very excited for this one. What I know about this is that a young girl gets captured by a sorcerer or evil something of some kind, and she's trapped in this, I think also castle, and there's like a whole bunch of black dogs, and one of them is like her suitor or something, and she has to like suss out which dog is her love, and hopefully they can escape together or something. I'm not 100% sure, but I know there's a lot of animals. There's a really spunky cat I've heard. I think his name's like Gary or something, but he seems cool. No, Bob. I think it's Bob the cat. Bob seems cool. And I've also heard there's some otters and some birds, so lots of wildlife. And it is an Irish fairy tale, and I feel like Ireland is always pretty fun. So I am excited to see what this one entails, and I'll definitely tell you guys more about it when I'm less of a confused mess, which has really no clue what this book is. It saddens me that I have to end this vlog on a bit of a low note, but I unfortunately do. The other two books I read in this video were absolutely amazing, so it saddens me that this one was pretty mediocre. The Little White Cat and the Dog That Wasn't all that exciting, but it wasn't terrible either. I didn't think it was cool that it was based off an Irish fairy tale that I didn't know much about, so I got to learn more about Irish mythology and their fairy tales, which I thought was pretty fun. This one follows a young maiden by the name of Alva, who is essentially kidnapped by an evil sorcerer alongside her beloved dog Akushla, and is trying to find a way to escape. She did poison like the entire staff once and ran away, but that was unfortunately not successful, and she finds herself trapped back in her room. She knows that in order to escape, she's gonna have to try harder than that, and her luck kind of turns around when a mysterious cat by the name of Bob comes into her room and is like, hey, I know how to help you defeat the sorcerer. If you give him a bargain in order to agree to finally marry him, he might like not be able to complete said impossible task, and you might be free to go, or at least like prolong your time it takes. And because like if she has more time, she might be able to escape. It's not the greatest plan ever, but it's not an awful plan, so Oliva takes it. That the other element of this book is that there's like 24 wolfhounds that reside in the castle, and one of them may just be her beloved dog, but as far as she knows, she's never seen him. And there's eventually an element, which I alluded to earlier, where like she has to figure out which one is her dog, but I was totally wrong about assuming he was like a man cursed into a dog, except that I kind of wasn't, because it was later revealed that that was true, but I'm not sure if I was supposed to know that or not, so I was a little confused about that element. Another complaint I had with this one was it was a little long. Like most of the author's books that she writes are only like 200 pages, and this one was like 340 pages, and I feel like this one could have probably like flourished as a novella also, but it wasn't like extremely painful, so I'm not going to complain about it too much. The first third of this book was actually my favorite. I enjoyed just following like the everyday lifestyle of this young girl who was mistaken as a princess, but like she's not actually a princess. She just spends most of her time like hanging out with the dogs, or she eventually gets a mirror where she can communicate with her best friend Saba, which I thought was pretty fun. And just seeing her working on her like everyday embroidery projects and stuff like that. I thought it was just like, it was really cozy and chill at the beginning. But then the beginning, or like the middle part, becomes kind of weird because there's like a love square going on. Like she's supposed to marry Trencross, the sorcerer who like kidnapped her, but she also made this deal with Bob and this guy named Fergus, who's like, hey, if I complete my quest, then I'll marry you at the end of it. And then there's also Akushla, who's her dog, who's actually a man, and all three of them kind of throw their hat in the ring for being her love interest. And personally, I just thought they were all kind of cringe and none of them really worked. So the romance aspect of this one wasn't there for me. As like a fairy tale itself, it was fine, but with like the romance aspect wasn't there. And then at the end of the book, there's also like a sequence of like battle scenes that kind of happen, and I was completely lost. Like I just didn't really understand what happened in any of them, and just completely lost interest in the plot line. But yeah, overall, I gave this one a low 3 out of 5. It wasn't horrible, but it wasn't great. Definitely like the fairy tale whimsical aspect was the most fun part, and learning more about Irish culture and their history, because it was definitely like embedded in the history of Ireland, which I also thought was pretty fun. But yeah, let's do a little wrap up and review before I go here. The first book I read in this book was Ella's Rise, which was really fun. I gave it 4 out of 5. A very unique Cinderella retelling, which is something you don't see every day. It's low spice, but is open door, so definitely keep an eye on that. And the rest, there's also 3 other books in the series, and I'm super excited to check out that all feature different fairy tales. I already own book 2, so I will definitely be reading that one soon, and you can hopefully hear my thoughts on it in the near future. The second book I read was Wrath of the Never Queen by Storm Lomax, which was not gonna lie, my favorite book of the month. It was so good. I'm definitely buying a physical copy of it when I get the chance, and we'll certainly reread it before I die, because that book was really, really, really good. It's a Beauty and the Beast retelling, which I thought was done in such a unique and artful way. I loved the main characters. Shivani and Theo are so endearing, and they'll always have a special place in my heart. I just love them so much. And then finally, the little cat and the dog who wasn't. This one was definitely more mid, but it wasn't a horrible experience. So overall, I'm going to say this reading challenge was a success. I do love myself fairy tale retelling, so it's no surprise that these books were mostly really good. I do have actually like a whole another string of fairy tale retellings that I was sent from authors recently, so I might do a part 2 of this video in the near future, because I absolutely adore fairy tale retellings, and I'm really excited to read all 3 of them. So yeah, hopefully you guys enjoyed me reading fairy tale retellings, as it's one of my favorite things to do, and I love talking about them. And it's always nice because usually they're like fairy tales that people know, so it's easy to talk about them and like explain them to other people without spoiling too much of the plot, which I think is definitely a plus. But yeah, thanks for watching, book nerds, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!